All right. Just while we can get this thing squared away, I want your full name, sir. Hard question.
Roy Lee Cooke.
All right. Tell us, Mr. Cook, how, when were you born?
Christmas Day, 1941.
And parents?
My father's name was Cook. It had formerly been Koch, or Cook, K-O-C-H, but we changed the spelling a little bit in West Virginia. My mother was an Augustino, and they were from Italy. My father was Jewish.
Okay, brothers and sisters, family, siblings?
One of each.
All right. Are they living now?
My brother, up until the time he died, at age 75, ran 5 miles a day and lifted weights. My sister's still alive and well and doing well in North Carolina.
And where are you living now?
My official residence is in South Carolina, in the Columbia area. My business that I have here in West Virginia are located in Cross Lanes.
Okay. Now, of course, you very famously grew up in Coalwood, West Virginia. Can you tell us a little bit about Coalwood?
Coalwood was probably the most wonderful coal company-owned town in the world, because the person that founded that town, Mr. Carter, Mr. Jim Carter, was a very progressive industrialist of his time. He owned a railroad company, lots of coal mining areas, and he provided in our town not only hard surface roads and sidewalks, but playgrounds for the children, baseball fields, football fields. We had a couple of schools. We had our own bakery, our own newspaper, our own swimming pool eventually, our own theater. And because he believed that if the family of the worker was happy, then there was more production to be received from the worker. And I guess he proved it.
Now, you mentioned Coalwood having a lot of different things. What's one of your earliest memories of Coalwood?
Well, I guess my earliest memory was Christmas Day, 1941. I think Santa Claus brought me. I'm not sure. Who knows? But it was the wonderment of having family and school friends and neighbors that were all closely knit. We all cared for one another. I tell people a lot of times that we had the United Mine Workers there that my father helped bring to Coalwood, and but it was not the churches or the union that held the town together. It was the school. It was the school itself. Coalwood, with various names: Coalwood Elementary, Coalwood Junior High School, Coalwood Public School. But it was the little school in the hill.
So now you mentioned the mine workers, so the United Mine Workers. So that was part of Coalwood.
It was definitely a part of Coalwood. Coalwood had about 2,000 people at one time, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. And it was every summer the houses got painted. They maintained everything in a pristine fashion. But it was a good town. And
your first memories of the group that would later become the Rocket Boys. I mean, Sonny and Odell, and I mean, tell us a little bit about your first memories of when did you guys get together as friends?
Okay, well, first of all, of the 6 Rocket Boys, 5 of us started school in the first grade there in Coalwood. Only Quentin went to another junior high school down in Bartley. So almost from the very beginning in Coalwood, initially it was Sonny Hickle and myself, because we had some devious things we did. We had our own newspaper that we hand printed, and it became a gossip column, and it got us in some trouble with our mothers, who decided it was not for us. And I guess by the time we were in the 3rd or 4th grade, then Billy and Jimmy and Sonny sort of joined our group, and we were very close. Sherman and Jimmy both had ailments. Sherman had polio, and Jimmy had an ailment where his legs certainly didn't grow at the same rate. So they could not participate in sports, but Billy and I did. And even Sonny did in the 7th grade. I often laugh because his eyesight was so poor that I loved seeing him out on the defensive backfield because I could always run around him. He just couldn't see me. He probably would attack him if he could see me. And we stayed together and eventually got out of Coalwood, went over to Big Creek High School, that wonderful, iconic, historic high school that was just known for its sports and its great academic work. And there we met Quentin. Quentin had already read all of the textbooks for high school by the time he got there. He certainly knew more than most of the teachers, at least he wanted us to believe that, and had a very high IQ. And so, we went to Big Creek in August of 1957, and less than 2 months later, Sputnik went over. And that was when we were drawn together thinking that we could change the world by making our own rockets.
And you found a sponsor, a teacher, someone who really made a difference in your life about that same time. Can you tell us about Miss Riley?
Sure. Well, I'm going to skip Miss Riley for a moment,
Okay.
because at Big Creek, as well as in Coalwood, we had a tremendous support from our teachers. They were dedicated, mostly women, but there were some men, teachers that really gave us a lot of support and pushed us in our endeavor to go to college. Miss Riley didn't actually come into our lives until our senior year in high school. She was barely 2 years older than us. She had graduated from Concord. I always joke that she was one of the few people I knew that graduated from Concord since I spent 1 year there before transferring. But it was Miss Riley that pointed us in the direction of science fairs. Before that, we were being successful with our rockets, but maybe there was no direction. And she helped us with some reading material that gave us some direction. It certainly put us in the direction of the science fairs. Now, Billy and I had already participated in math contests all over the county and the region, but this was the first time for science. And that was, I think, the thing that probably, we know that we won the national fair, but it projected us more into a formal way. We were calling ourselves Rocket Boys. We had our Big Creek Missile Association. We seemed to have a purpose then.
All right, tell us a little bit about it. You mentioned Concord University, Concord College at the time. You spent a whole 12 months there. Tell us about your time
University
there.
of Concord, located in Athens, UCLA, and I spent my first year in college at good old Concord. It was a very enjoyable time for me. I made good grades, but I had way too much fun, and therefore I stayed on social probation the whole year. And I have a lot of stories about that, which I will not tell you now. But I realized that what I needed for my career that I was looking forward to, that I needed a larger university agenda. And I applied at the major universities in the D.C. area and finally chose the University of Maryland, probably because it was less expensive than the others.
And tell us about, after you got out of school, first jobs. You know, a lot of the folks want to know about the Rocket Boys afterwards. Tell us about that.
I had a career in banking, and actually that career started out in D.C., Washington, D.C., and I was there for a number of years, and transferred down to North Carolina. I eventually, before I retired, I ran the only minority-owned bank in South Carolina, and I retired at a fairly early age, thinking that was the thing to do, and realized after about a year of madness that I could not do zero, and I went from that into a lot of other endeavors. I currently own computer training centers in three states. And I have a trucking and courier business in the Charleston area that serves a half dozen states. And we do some hotel and motel development throughout the Southeast.
When Sonny came to you and said, "Hey, I'm going to write a book about our high school fair days," what'd you think?
Well, first of all, this is the way it happened. He had already published the short side of it in Aerospace magazine, and he searched me down. I don't know how he found me, because at that time I had just about lost contact with anybody that I had known in high school. And he searched me down and came to Columbia, and he brought with him some of our old memorabilia, and he brought a copy of the article. And he told me that at that time that he had sold the rights to the movie, and he was going to make it into a full-length book. And I was very excited. I told a lot of people, but it took a while to develop. I think maybe 2 or 3 years. I can't remember exactly, but he would send updates from time to time to the boys. And after a while, I got to think, this is not going to happen. I'd been involved in making a movie at one time, and I knew the heartbreak of spending a lot of money and seeing nothing happen to it. But in time, it did. I got a call in early 1998 that they were developing the movie over in Tennessee, and I was fortunate enough to be invited over to watch some of the production. Later on, when it came out as a sneak preview in Columbia, South Carolina, where I was living, and I went to the theater, and they were sold out. They wouldn't give me a seat. And they had basically a private showing for me after a friend of mine just raised so much cane with the theater people. And I'm glad I did, because that was the first time of seeing the movie. It evoked an awful lot of old memories, so that when I got to go to the premiere over in Knoxville, I was able to withstand the sobbing of some of my cohorts. We men don't like to be seen crying in public. We do all ours in the bathroom, I guess. I don't know where we do it. But I wanted to also tell you that the book, Rocket Boys, and the movie, October Sky, lit a fire under me. I was ready to retire for the 4th or 5th time, who knows how many times. And I was ready to settle down and do next to nothing like some of my current peers do. But I was asked to replace, I think it was Sonny anyway, at a speaking engagement up in Morgantown. And it was the annual Small Business Administration banquet. And at that meeting, at that speech, and of course it was essentially a talk about growing up in West Virginia and the Rocket Boys, but it occurred to me that all the Rocket Boys had earned a living outside the state. That we'd all left the state and that only half of us had gotten our education in the state. Billy at WVU, and Quentin and Marshall, and Sherman over at Tech. And I said at that speech that I wanted to do something. And at the end of the speech, a person in the audience was a bank president that walked up and said, "Whatever you want to do, I'll try to help you." And I went back home and I thought about it, and I said, I owe the state of West Virginia a real debt of gratitude. And I came back, and I initially brought a computer learning center to the Fairmont area. I brought a software company out of Michigan to that area as well. I bought another company down in Charleston. Eventually started bought the company I've got now in Cross Lanes. Started the Prodigy Foundation. Prodigy Foundation is to recognize a school teacher that has overcome great obstacles to be a teacher, or become a teacher, to be a teacher. Scholarships for students. I have worked with others to develop the History and Cultural Museum of Mining. All these things seem to be converging on Beckley.
Yeah.
Of course, I've known Beckley all my life. It was the heart of the southern West Virginia coal industry. My father, being a United Mine Worker, certainly the district was right here in Beckley. It just seems like everything is moving in my life towards that. We're bringing the West Virginia Teacher of the Year Award to Beckley to be at the same time frame as the October Sky Festival. We will give out an award. It has a monetary value, certainly I hope an honor to some teacher in our state this October. So that's all I've done.
Well, it does seem that you're reaching back.
Well, in my spare time,
Yeah, in your spare
I
time.
like to paint.
And walk your dog.
Well, no, I don't like to walk my dog. But I've been asked several times what would I have liked to have done other than what I've done, and I would like to have been a poet. And that's it.
There's time. There's time. You do seem to be reaching back to help others. So that indicates to me that it's possible that you've had help from others, that you've seen that as far as a trait. Can you tell us about just a few folks that are instrumental as far as helping little Roy Lee become big Roy Lee?
Well, first I would be terribly remiss if I didn't mention my mother. My father died when I was 13, and my mother went to work in the school cafeteria there in Coalwood to help support us. And my school principal from Coalwood, Robert Likens, who's in the who's who of athletes in small colleges of all things, and so as well as his son. He was a tough man that was at every athletic practice we had. He took a personal interest in baseball because he was a very good pitcher, and also he taught every child in Coalwood how to swim. But he would slap you down in a heartbeat if you felt like someone owed you something. He would remind you that no one owes you anything, and you can be anything that you want to be. From that, I have developed my theory that it does not matter that your grandparents came from Italy and could hardly speak the language and worked in a coal mine. It doesn't matter if your parents are living in the Rust Belt and sometimes you have a job and sometimes you don't, or your family has been sharecroppers for generations, and it doesn't even matter if your mother doesn't know the name of your father who abandoned your birth. But you have to get an education. It is an absolute must. You can't go through this world without an education. I used to help my uncle, who was a mason, lay bricks, and I told him when I was about 17, I want to be a brick mason like him. And I don't know what he hit me with, but he said, you're going to get a college education because you can always lay bricks. But you have to get that education, and you have to be focused. You can't just take a job and meander through this life. You have to want to be somebody. But if you do those things, we all laugh about working hard and it'll come to you. Well, it doesn't always come to you. But if you work and are focused and you have that education, you have as big a chance as the next person to getting a piece of that American pie. It's there. Our economy is growing every day. It is. I know if you're unemployed, you're 100% unemployed, but there are jobs being created every day. I saw in this morning's paper, Governor Tomlin is going to expand Medicaid into the state. It's $500 million into our state. You're going to create 6,200 jobs. May not sound like much, but it is something that we need. And so there are people out there. Of course, Miss Riley was a great person to put me on the right track. I had no idea how in the world I would ever get through college. Billy went on a GI Bill. Billy and Jimmy, I guess, back up, and a lot of them got scholarships from one way or another. I didn't have any of that. I never got a loan. I worked every day, sometimes 3 jobs, but I worked. And so when my grandchildren, and I have a bunch of them, when they tell me that, you know, I want to be this, I want to be that, great. I got one in law school, one that's is a graduate in sports medicine, and I think they'll all do well as long as they get their education, as long as they stay focused. And I saw a good friend of ours with a whistle on a while ago, and I was at a school down in Florida one time, and the assistant principal, all he did was blow that whistle. He blew the whistle at everybody. Walking down the hall, he blew the whistle. So I told him, they didn't know who I was talking to, I don't guess, but in the crowd I said, we can't crush the spirit of our children. You don't know who's the genius sitting out there that may be the biggest clown, the biggest cut up, the biggest ruffian in the world. That might be the genius. And you cannot crush that spirit. Is that my pacemaker?
That's right. Well, I got one more question once the bell's finished. Okay. And
I was a boxer at one time, so
yeah,
okay.
that's right.
I'm ready to sit down.
Ready to sit down. All right. You know, at the Theater West Virginia has the Rocket Boys musical, and you're portrayed as the love master of McDowell County. Now, was that true?
Well, first of all, it's not limited to McDowell County. It's a small county. But not only is it true, it's absolutely true. And I try every day to live up to that reputation.
Oh, still?
Still, yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, I need to get that on tape. Mr. Cooke, are there anything that else you want us to know, or you think we've got a good start here?
I think it's a good start.
All right. We'll be talking to you as we go along through the festival, and thank you for your time.
More than welcome.